Okiru.
Yes, this is
right.
the first virtual podcast.
Welcome to the first virtual podcast of Okiru.
And it's just the two co-founders, just having a
Yes.
discussion. But yeah, I guess where this came from, so JP like miscalled me, like Pocket Dial called me on Friday, and I called him back, and we just had a FaceTime, and we just ended up having just this discussion just about all these like random things, just from a random conversation.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we started talking about was like what's going on, like stress and stuff like that with work. And one things I was talking about how in work, so they're training me to have this admin role, and sometimes I was getting pissed off because I was still doing my normal role, and then when I got out of that training, I'd go back and I'd have a bunch of work piled up for me, right? And initially, I was getting a bit pissy because they're like, "Oh, we'll help you out. Don't worry about like these retrievals or whatever. We'll do that for you." And sometimes I'll come back. I'm like, I'll have a pile of work. I'm like, what the hell, man? You guys are supposed to. And there was a point where my anger was a bit, it was seen, but I tried to hold myself back, and it made me start to think about like, I was like, well, maybe they were so busy that they didn't have time to do the work. And that having that mindset of putting myself in that person's position and dealing with my stress for myself, like going back to what can I control. And I guess in saying that, it's kind of like, how do we deal with certain stresses, like in those environments? Like for you, like when you have certain stresses, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. I guess for me, like when I'm trying to deal with stress, there is that certain outburst at the start where you're like, emotions take over. You act on emotion, but when you realize that you just have to take that moment and just to breathe and just be like, okay, why did this happen? What are the things that I can do to control it? Like my own actions that I can do that I can control.
Yeah, it comes to that. Like that breathing part is so important, right? Taking that time to take a moment. All right, I'm gonna pause. All right, just do my breathing exercise or whatever. And it helps. It helps if you have the intention of it trying to help you, right? Because obviously, like, I would have been this person a while back, like, oh, just breathe, like, oh, breathing does nothing. Like, I do that all the time, type of thing. It's like, how is breathing going to help? But if you have the intention of using breath as a relaxation or just a calmness for that certain situation, it helps a lot, right?
Yeah, and that, just removing yourself from the situation sometimes also helps a lot. Honestly, if you're in that situation and you're just having so much come at you at one time, and there's so much you can take, and then you have to just remove yourself from that situation.
Exactly.
Take a moment to yourself, breathe, have that time to think. Yeah.
Exactly. And we also discussed that fixed mindset and growth mindset. Kind of forgot the discussion, but because I'm reading a book now called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and I listened to this before, and I completed the whole audio book, but I wasn't intentional about listening to it. And then for some reason, like this week, after, I don't know why, like I guess it's because of the whole lockdown thing, and I'm just trying to find things that can help me like ground myself, remove myself from the emotion. I was like, okay, I'm gonna read this book. I'm gonna study this book and not read it. And it's kind of like that fixed versus growth mindset. Whereas like sometimes you read a book just to say, oh, I read this book. I've read this amount of books.
Yeah.
It feels good. And like, oh man, I can't believe read that amount of books. And I'm like, now I'm changing my perspective. I'm like, why am I reading this book? And a lot of people have said this book's really good, and I know it's really good. Well, it's when I listened to the audio, like it was great to listen to while you're at work or whatever. But then when I'm reading it now, it's taken me a lot longer to read because I'm writing things down, actually studying it. Like, what am I learning? What value am I getting out of this? And that is what the growth mindset is like finding that value, right? And instead of that fixed mindset of like, where's the value in it? What are my strengths and weaknesses, and focusing on like just that self-centeredness type of thing. Whereas the growth is kind of just like, what can I learn from this and how can I apply it to what we're doing, you know? And especially we'll come back to that stress thing, like what you said, you know, taking yourself back. You take yourself out of the situation as opposed to reacting to it, type of thing, right?
Yeah, it's really good. Like when you look at something and you try to dissect all the different parts of it instead of just try to go through the motions of, for like reading. There's a lot of the times I'll just like, I start a book, I want to just finish it, but like not with the real intention to actually like absorb every single thing. I'll be like, okay, cool, I'm halfway. But what did I really learn from this book?
Exactly.
Like sometimes it's like you have to step back and go like, okay, what did I actually learn? And that's it's good that you did that. Yeah.
And like I'm finding it's helping a lot more actually. I have a notebook. I have so many notebooks from like, what the hell am I doing with these notebooks? So I was like, I'm gonna have a notebook for business. I'm gonna have a notebook for book notes. And I was like, I have a book for journaling. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So like, because when you write something down, I guess you can say it tends to, you know, stay in, you remember it a bit better when you write something down, right? So it's just having that like initiative and working and finding in yourself your faults. Like I only recently found that fault in me. Like I was reading because of the sake of reading as opposed to studying it. Because like, you know, when like back in school, like we're giving so many textbooks and all these books to read. How many of us read for the sake of studying? I know I didn't. I had so many textbooks by the end of like senior year, and like I didn't even touch it. I was like, people were drawing penises in it. I was drawing sneakers. So it's kind of like, you know, it's just like another book to draw on, right? We didn't respect the content type of thing.
Yeah. So with like all those journals and stuff that you wrote, like how often do you go back to looking at those journals or
that's a
or
good
your
one.
writing?
That's a good one too. And I thought about that too, because last week, because I was actually this week, I was getting to a point where because of the whole lockdown, we're kind of like, what the hell do I do? Right? Like as I mentioned in a previous podcast, like it got to me, right? I was a bit frustrated, excuse me, and I was a bit like angry about it. And then like this week I realized, like I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, right? And it just made me go back and write what I was what I was grateful for. And that's when I looked at my journals, and that's when I read it. I don't think it's something you have to read all the time or write in all the time, like a lot of people do. I think it's a good habit to have. But I guess for me, it's kind of like when I feel like I need to remember why I do the things that I do, why we do the things that we do, right? It kind of reminds you of all those things. And I guess that's why journaling is important, because you can reflect on how you were a year ago or how you were a couple of years ago, like what we're doing, right? We're writing our own stories. This is a good time to reflect on it. And I guess to answer your question about how often do I read my journal, probably like once or twice a month. And then sometimes if I'm writing in my journal, I'll like read something that I wrote previously, or, you know, 2 pages back, just to remind myself, where have I gone from when I wrote last time to where I am writing now, type of thing. You know?
And it's always like interesting to see all the stuff that you were thinking about back then to where you are now. I remember when we were like going through like all our ideas, and when because how we're going back on to see what the stuff that we did back in the past, and we're writing our personal stories. Like it's interesting to see. I was going through my my notes on my phone, and we're just like, wow, I can't believe like that's my mindset before and stuff like that. Like to see how far we've gone to where we were before. It's crazy.
It is. And I guess because this is something I realize now, like how has your mindset changed from where you are now to, let's say, a year ago? Like,
oh man, it's crazy. Like, so like for me, like I was honestly, I didn't have a projection or goal to go towards. I was kind of just living each day.
Mm.
I was really jaded to life,
Yeah,
basically, and I was just like, what am I gonna do? But yeah, like well actually, let's say you go. So I'm talking about before that, really.
yeah.
But yeah, a year ago I was like building towards
Mm.
where I am now, like looking at all the stuff that I had to go through, and yeah, I was still building myself, really.
Yeah,
But yeah,
100%. Like I recorded a podcast I think like a couple of days ago, just because I had this thought of like of that, like how far my mindset has come, and I was pretty much talking about like, because I saw Chris's photo of his transformation, right? You saw
yeah,
it like
that's crazy.
from a couple years back, and he said in the next slide, he was like, I can't believe how my mindset has changed, like what my body has become, right? Like they go hand in hand, the body and the mindset. And it made me, I was like thinking, like, man, when I was lifting a while back, I was lifting for the sake of removing, like escaping my emotions and all my problems and what was going on with life. But now, like when I lift, because at that time, like my mindset was bad, like it was just completely just going through a lot of stuff, like everything was mumble jumble, all the good and the bad, right? It was all mixed together. But now when I was training, like even without the lockdowns, um like I'm lifting heavier, I feel stronger, I feel so much better. And it just hit me. I was like, man, like what is my mindset now from when I was lifting? And I had that it was, you know, the difference was night and day. Like I was lifting for the sake of emotions and trying to bash it all of that out on the weights, but now I'm doing it for my health. I'm doing it because it makes me feel good. It's time for me. It's like my time to, you know, after work, you just go to the gym and you just like, you just release it all like there, because, you know, you get to do something you want to do after work, right? And
yeah.
just having that difference, just noticing, I was like, yeah, wow, your mindset and how your body feels is incredible. Like you need to have that mindset as much as having your physical health. They go hand in hand.
You always see like actually on like TikTok or Instagram and stuff how people like the people that start off like working out really hard are the like heartbroken people.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true.
It's like you're heartbroken and you see them like lifting you up, like, but they always end up like from that journey from where they were like heartbroken. Then they like you see their transformation where they that's where they started, but like their growth and their mindset changed completely to get to the point where it's just like now they're doing it for like because for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, like now it's insane. It's a crazy like. Especially seeing Chris, like his transformation from like we've heard his story. I don't know, just to see him from that to where he is now.
Exactly.
It's insane.
It's oh man, like I saw the photos, like God damn, like what? It's crazy. It's crazy to see like how much with intentional action it is to, you know, do those things, right?
Yeah,
and just
the discipline is crazy.
Exactly, the discipline. And I guess it comes back to like the other thing I wanted to talk about, purposeful suffering. Like you know, I just saw a story by Joe Rogan. I freaking love the guy. He's just like such an incredible human being. And he was like talking about, he was in a sauna and he was just saying to like have that purposeful suffering. And it was kind of like what we did with the challenges. It was we intended to push ourselves, to stretch ourselves. And that is the point of suffering, right? Because we're going to uncomfortable areas to push ourselves, like with the 3,318 push-ups and the half a marathon. That's something we pushed ourselves, and it was incredibly uncomfortable to do.
Yeah, going back to that, like I think it's just pushing yourself in that uncomfortable situation to grow. I can't remember who said it, but like he did like an example of a lobster has to, for it to grow, like it has to, like, you know, it's forced to break its shell and it's needs to, for it to grow, like it's uncomfortable. That's the reason why it needs to break its shell and grow.
Exactly.
like he was saying, like lobsters had doctors and they gave it like things to like numb the pain and stuff like that, then it wouldn't grow. It'll just stay in its shell. It won't grow any further. So yeah, I think we need that suffering,
100%. It's like I was hearing, like I just came out of like a major conference this weekend, and just hearing all the stories of people, the suffering they went through, and they were all saying like, because of these sufferings, because of these things happening, like it made me who I am. And they're always like grateful for it. They're always grateful for the suffering at the end of it. And it's kind of like man, they would ask a question like, would you change anything about it? It's like, no. And that's how the strongest characters are built, when they realize that the suffering was necessary. And wouldn't it be better if you put yourself in intentional suffering for when those suffering comes, like you're prepared for it, as opposed to letting life do it for you. It's kind of like being prepared all the time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like having that intentional suffering builds up your resilience for when things really go bad for you. Yeah, you're able to fight through that because you've gone through some suffering. Your mindset has prepared you to go through that suffering and go through that storm.
100%. And like with this purposeful suffering stuff, it doesn't have to be like anything over the top. Like I'm gonna run a full marathon even if I can't run like 3 kilometers. It's like, what's the point? Like start small. Like we did. Like we broke it down. All right, we know we can run X amount, so 5Ks isn't gonna be enough. All right, 10 kilometers, that's gonna be a challenge. But I know in ourselves we can push ourselves.
We can do it, yeah.
And then obviously the next one was 21 kilometers, right? And that was when we were like, oh man, like I think we can stretch this. It's gonna be super hard. But at the end of it, we did complete it. We didn't choose a full marathon because we knew at that time we're probably not gonna complete it, right?
Yeah.
So it was still we chose something within that stretch zone. So it's knowing what your stretch zone is, like what is your threshold for pain and suffering. And that's the other thing, right? Like figuring out where do we need to stretch ourselves? Like how many people are actually putting themselves in challenging situations, in those hard situations, because pressure is a privilege. Like you always hear that pressure is a privilege, and it really is, because it's those times where you can actually grow, right? So it's I guess one question I want to ask is, what are some challenging things you want to do this year to push yourself and stretch yourself?
To push myself?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I'm terrible public speaker. I'm terrible at speaking. As a person who enjoys using my hands to create something, or putting pen to paper, like I'll like drawing, or like being behind the scenes, talking is like I live too much in my head to be able to communicate it outside. Like it's like talking. Like I want to be a better speaker. So doing this, like these podcasts and stuff like that, I think that's one of the things that would help me grow. What else? There's a lot of other things that I want that I can't think of in my head, but that's one of the big ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm definitely the same. Like, like if you knew me ever since I was young, like I was that quiet person. I was the shyest kid. Like I was scared to talk to anyone. And then look, now we're here starting our podcast, right? Yes. That difference, that 9-day difference. And like I remember, like I was so afraid of speaking. I was that person in grade 1 who, when they do the roll call and they say make sure you say here, I was like not saying anything. I was like look, raise my hand and like okay, I see you. And there was this one time, like when we were doing the thing for church, right? We had to say what we wanted to do when we grow up, and like I just started crying on stage. Like all I had to say was,
you're the same as me, right?
We're the same, right? Yeah. I just wanted to do this, and now like, and even when I was doing presentations, I'd like in high school, I'd be like, oh miss, can I do my presentation like just one-on-one with you, because I was just so afraid of speaking, right? And like I'd always just look at my notes and just stare at my notes and speak from there. So look where we are now. We're stretching ourselves with these podcasts too, right?
Yeah.
And just learn and becoming better at being speakers as it is. So yeah, man, like I try to challenge myself sometimes, like every day. Like one thing they say is like do one thing like uncomfortable every day to challenge yourself. And like there's I forgot where I heard it, but yeah, it was just having that growth in every day that you do. And like I was doing cold showers. I got to a point where I was doing it for like a month or two.
That's
and then
crazy.
Doing those runs, that's the hard. Like running sucks, man. Like it freaking sucks. Like this weekend, like I was just running, and there was times when you just feel like a sudden stitch and you feel that pain, like you want to vomit. And then this is how powerful the mindset is, your mind is, because I was like, I'm gonna run straight. It was only like very short kilometers, right? It was only like 2.3 kilometers or something like that. For me, that's a lot. Like I'm a fat ass guy, so like my cardio. I know the beast, man. I know you're the beast, man.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, like my mind, like I was just internally talking to myself, like just one more step, man. One step. Like halfway through, I was like 1.3 kilometers in, and like I just wanted to stop. I was like, man, my stomach is hurting, like it's just pinching me so bad. I feel something coming up to my throat, like vomit. And like in my mind, I was just like, just push yourself, like stay hard, like David Goggins says, you know. And like I always sprint that last 100 like 100 kilometers, 50 meters.
Yeah.
And I got to the end, I was like, freak, like I just realized how powerful the mindset is. So I'm like thinking, like, what else can I do if I ran X amount, or if I did this, if I just had that internal self-talk, like those internal things to keep me going, like I know I can complete it, you know. And even today, like I did that run, so every time I do this run, I try to beat it, I try to smash it out. And like I always put myself 1% better, 1% better. And I did it for like 4 days straight, and initially it was like X amount, and then the next day I got 10 seconds better. I was like, damn, 10 seconds better, that's better than 1%. And then the day after that, it went 30 seconds better. I was like, all right, I can do this. And then the last day I got to a minute better. I was like, wow, just doing the actions consistently and doing them like with your mind set focus on finishing it, it makes a lot of sense. It's not, albeit it's not a lot, it's not a big like challenge or anything, but it's kind of just like, what else can I do? You know, what else can we do if we just had the right mindset and right self-talk, you know, type of thing.
And I was doing those steps to get to that bigger goal.
Exactly. That's it. Oh man, like you realize when you do the action how big small steps are. It's not like I'm gonna beat this in 2 minutes, or I'll do this big thing and that'll be the biggest difference. It's like, nah, man, like the small things will make the biggest difference. Like I'm gonna say, like a year ago, I was running this same path at 20 minutes, and from this weekend, I was running it at 12 minutes. 1 year, like 8-minute difference, man. So it's kind of like, what can you do? Like, how much can you push yourself? And I had to have that patience for the results to show. Like, I was so frustrated. Like, man, there was a period that time last year. I remember it. I really wanted to run it at like 15 minutes, and for so long I was stuck at like 18, and I was like, this sucks. So frustrated, right? But like now I'm doing it in 12, 13 minutes. I'm just so happy.
Crazy.
You know? So it's just having to have the resilience and to keep pushing on like consistently.
No, that's crazy, man. Far out. Yeah, because most people, like, once they can't break that, like for you, it was like the 18-minute mark that you couldn't break, and then they kind of just give up, like, okay, that's it. That's my limit.
Yeah.
Like you were able to, like, okay, I'm going to take these little steps to get towards that, to like the 12 under 15-minute mark, and now you're doing like 12, 13. That's great.
Exactly, right? It's just those baby steps that are so important.
So I wanted to go back to that topic of purposeful suffering.
Yes.
Like what is one of the biggest ones for you this year?
Biggest ones.
Yeah.
I think one of the things obviously that running, I really want to get to a time close. All right, this is gonna be hard, but when I was doing the run, I want to try to do a 4-minute mile, which is so hard,
Yeah.
right? And I want to try. This is in terms of running, is try to get 10 kilometers or even 5 kilometers done just running straight. I really want to try a vegetarian diet, because I just was watching this documentary about like, yeah, this is what I've been doing like in lockdown, just watching documentaries, because I'm just like, I'm in lockdown. I don't want to be watching TV shows that are gonna bring no value to me. And I'll just be watching so many crazy documentaries, man. Like I was watching this documentary called Operation Odessa, which is like about this drug dealer who like tries to buy a submarine. It's crazy. What else was I watching? I watched The Dissident, like this. It's about like what's it called? The princes in Dubai, I think. I don't know if it's Dubai, one of the Middle Eastern countries. I forgot. And like, it's just so crazy. Like but anyway, I digress. Like, I was watching this documentary about like these athletes, and they were, excuse me, they went from a meat diet to like vegetarian, like a what's it called? I forgot. Yeah, anyway, plant-based diet. And they're just saying like how the differences on their body and how much they feel better. And I was like, man, that interests me so much. Like, I don't want to stop eating steaks. So I was like thinking maybe like a flexitarian, but just eating steaks and just veggies and everything else. That's something I want to try. Like, for someone who always eats fast food, always wants his meats and all that juicy and sweet goodness. Like, it's something I want to try, right? Just to see the difference. And I guess last thing, I want to push myself, purposeful suffering. So when I say running, diet, and also I think these podcasts, man, like trying to just be better speaker and being a better conversationalist, just trying to just gain more skills in communication, right? Because it's such a necessary and essential skill, like to anything. So you can have all these other skill sets in the world, but if you can't communicate, it's kind of just like it's like a missing piece that you need, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's key. It's definitely key.
It's key.
Yeah.
What about you? Go.
I was gonna just say, like, just to add on to that, it was like, especially because we have this platform now, to be able to do this podcast and to have hopefully these people that we have lined up, if we can interview them at our best, like, have the right communication to talk to them, and they ask them the right questions, it will be like a lot of value to people listening.
100%. And like I was discussing this with JP, is kind of like because I listen to a lot of podcasts, you kind of see the different styles they have. And they're still able to create value through their conversations. Like, they'll have Joe Rogan, who just has a conversation and they'll talk about all these random subjects, but you'll always find value in it. And then you'll have like Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu, and then you'll have like this interview setting, like they're still having a conversation, but like, there's questions already, like he's already thought about. And there's others, like, who else do I listen to? There's just, everyone has their own style, everyone has their own technique, and like the best way to actually get better at it is to just do more podcasts, right? It's just taking those action steps and taking action overall to become better. So that's why I guess we try to push for more podcasts, is not only for us to get better at conversationalists, but to just share people's stories and share what people have to share, different perspectives, and just opening that door to them and for us.
No, definitely. But yeah, to answer that question, the things that I probably want to do, of course, this thing, but also before, I let a lot of fear take over a lot of my decisions. And so like, whenever something was kind of out of my comfort, I'd say no immediately and not even give it a chance. Because the thing that's being asked of me can be good for me, but because of fear, I'm like, nah, I don't want to do it because it makes me feel uncomfortable. But like, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to push myself to be open to it and to try to like, not try, but do it, you know, like say yes to things that make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like small things, like, and I have like things at work where I'll be like, oh, can you, you know, stand in front of these people, do like a presentation on blah, blah, blah. I'll be like, normally I would say no. I'll be like, you know, okay, I'm going to do it, you know, and just like put myself in that uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. It's like, it's, you know, that the thing that, what do you call that movie? Yes, Man.
Yes, yeah.
Like, yeah. Like where he says yes to a lot of things and all these things are going great for him. It's like, yeah.
Damn. Yeah, that's one thing I'd want to do too, is like choosing things that you're not comfortable with, like removing yourself out of that safe zone and doing presentations, like you said, like, damn, like I really want to do a presentation, but I'm scared. Man.
Yeah, I know, right? Like even now, like when I think about it, like, oh man, I gotta do a presentation. Oh, damn, I'm sweating. But now I'm like, yeah, man, I just gotta push myself.
Yeah. Why do you think, like, because public speaking is one of the biggest fears, why do you think we're afraid of public speaking?
I think it's judgment. I think you're thinking about what other people are thinking about you.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I said this word wrong. Like, you know, now they're gonna judge me. Now they're gonna think this of me, or like I'm like this person's dumb.
Yeah.
Or they said something like, you know, like, oh, did I say something offensive?
Yeah.
Like it's just like a lot of judgment, I think.
Yeah.
When it comes to public speaking, that's the mindset, I think.
Like a lot of judgment, a lot of overthinking. Oh, I should have said this word. Oh, damn, like, you know, like there's that, and man, like it's so relatable. I think it is, like, judgment is probably one of the biggest factors to that. So how do you think we can remove, or I guess not fear judgment as much, because judgment is always going to be there?
Well, the one thing I keep, like, you know, that I'm trying to implement is that a lot of the times people are, well, they're not, first of all, they're not as judgmental as you think they are. That's the thing. They're most likely they're thinking about themselves.
It's so true.
When you're talking to someone and you're like nervous to talk to them, you're watching every word you say. But for them, they're probably watching every word they're saying, and they're like, so there's that. I don't know. You have your own self thing, like what do you call it? Preconception of what the other person's thinking, and it like makes that barrier between just having a proper conversation or something like that. You know?
Exactly, and it could be like, oh man, like, did I close the door to my car, or like, did I lock my door to my house? It could be thinking of that, like, you know, it's like what you said. It's just us like putting those preconceived like judgments on other people, and it's just like, you know what, stuff it. Like it's hard to get rid of, but it's something it's done through the process of talking to people, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think I'm trying to get to the point where you kind of just like, okay, it doesn't matter, like, if they, what opinion they hold of me. Like, I want to get to the point where I'm speaking because the thing that I'm speaking about, I truly believe, and I'll be ready to be disliked.
Yeah.
That poster that you gave me, honestly, I always look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's true, man. I gotta hold that true to my heart, man.
It's so true, right? Like, have the courage to be disliked and have the strength to transcend who you think you are and become better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's it.
That was a really good poster, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you giving that to me.
Of course, man. And it's something I try to live by, like, because we can't people please, we can't be liked by everyone. Yeah. So yeah, man, that was a good discussion. I know we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, that was awesome, man.
Yeah,